For us, it was, I mentioned earlier, pretty much a miraculous year. As many people have heard, we've had 3 very difficult years in a row because of hail. And this is especially true in the Meursault, Volnay, Pommard, Beaune areas. And our Volnay, we talked about earlier, it was pretty amazing. The problem, well, good news, bad news, what little bit of grapes we had were very, very ripe, and all the damaged and dried out berries from the hail had pretty much fallen off, and then also we got them off with the vibrating sorting table. And what was left was very, very ripe. That, frankly, is what is miraculous about it, is that with that much damage, we ended up making delicious wines. And I think that's the other thing that's interesting as we look back. I started drinking wines in the early 80s, mid 80s. And back then in Burgundy, when there was really no competition in the world, it was just beginning to appear in California and Oregon. Quite frankly, the Burgundians, everyone just threw everything in the soup. It didn't matter. That was, quote unquote, the vintage. What's great now is that there's a real, especially with the best winemakers, I mean, we know kind of who they are, there's a real rigor to give people delicious bottles every year at, frankly, almost whatever cost. And that means there's a lot less wine, and sometimes people say, well, I can't find it. Well, we can't find it either, but what you're getting are very, very good wines, a much higher quality than you would have just when I got here 22 years ago. The 13 whites are a bit of a mix between the power of the 08 and the freshness of the 10s and maybe the 11s. The acidity, I think what's wonderful is the acidity doesn't dominate, but it's there. I think when we were tasting, talk about the salinity, you get the sense you really want to have another glass, and that's the beauty of white Burgundy. And that's also, I think also, with those lower alcohols and conversely lower acidities, there's a beautiful balance between the two. The reds are a bit like, good question. The reds are pretty unique. They're a bit like 07 was early on. In some ways they have a bit of the 12 in it, and there's wonderful rich fruit but they're very airy and they're very light, and there's more volume to the wines than you had in 7 or in 12. And so it's again, a vin de plaisir, as we say. It's a wine you can drink young, enjoy for the next 3, 5, 7 years. And a couple of the wines will, I think, surprise people going out 10, 15 years. But these are the kind of vintages that will give a great deal of pleasure early on, especially for folks who are just beginning to put their toe in the water for Burgundy, who go, oh, well, Pinot Noir interests me, Chardonnay interests me, and these wines won't scare people off because they are accessible, but in a good sense, that there's a transparency to the wines, and you go, oh, this is what a Volnay should taste like, this is what a Vonromé or a Chambord should taste like, and I think that's going to give people a lot of pleasure.